After that historic double in 1985, Spencer never even made it back to a Grand Prix podium. But by then, another American, Eddie Lawson, had arrived on the scene, and he took over the 500cc mantle, claiming the 1984 title for Yamaha.
He was the Iceman, the precision, the robot.
I drew a parallel with Freddie Spencer and Marc Marquez, and I'd like to draw a parallel between Eddie Lawson and Jorge Lorenzo.
First of all, he's the most underrated of all the Americans and probably one of the most underrated world champions. Eddie was a fantastic rider.
And I think Eddie's real greatest achievement, the thing that marks him out as one of the greatest riders to me, was when he left Yamaha very unexpectedly and moved to Honda and won back-to-back on different bikes.
Lawson now just a few laps from an historic fourth World 500cc title.
Congratulations, you've just become the most successful American rider. You won your fourth World Championship. Just how do you feel right now?
There's no words to explain it. I'm just really happy for the team, Irv and all the guys. They did a terrific job, and just so happy right now.
Honda had made no attempt to get Eddie. It was Eddie coming to them. They had a full team with Gardner and Doohan, but they put on another truck, painted in the same colors, but it wasn't Honda factory. It just looked like Honda factory.
Wayne Gardner, he just could not believe what Honda had done. He brought Eddie Lawson in to ride. I mean, it was... Oh.
After 6 seasons with Yamaha, Lawson signed for Honda to tackle his great rival Wayne Gardner on the same machinery. In 1987, Gardner became the first Australian 500cc world champion, and his constant battles with Lawson go down as some of the most legendary head-to-heads in the history of the sport.
For me, the toughest racing was against Eddie Lawson. At my peak, he was at his best, and he was my arch rival. I could never understand how he could stay on the thing and ride it so fast.
Eddie Lawson hasn't forgotten about him, though. He's trying so hard to catch him.
Wayne was very different from Eddie, definitely. Wayne was like a bulldog.
One of the hardest, bravest, most determined riders I've ever met. Ride through injuries, ride through anything.
You know, I was leading the championship, and I needed just a few points more than Eddie and Randy. Started the race, and I went, you know what, just concentrate and think about winning the race instead of the championship. And it's what I did, and I pulled away and had a comfortable victory, and it was enough points to win the title, and a great place to win. It was a great party that night, and yeah, those moments up on the podium, it was pretty special because you dream about and you visualize all these days when you can be a world champion like some of the great riders. Truly, the dreams do come true, and it was a great achievement. The first Australian never to win the Premier class.
He put motorcycling on the map in Australia, but that's why Phillip Island suddenly staged Grand Prix. It was down to Wayne without a shadow of a doubt.
First of all, I got to thank everybody for coming. It's just unbelievable. Certainly something I really didn't expect.
The success of American riders in the 500cc World Championship showed no signs of abating in the years after Eddie Lawson.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Wayne Rainey and Kevin Schwantz forged another of the sport's truly great rivalries as they wrote the final chapter of this legendary era of American 500cc icons.
He's returned to 500cc Grand Prix racing this year. Schwantz from Gardner. And here's Schwantz pulling away in these closing minutes.
Was it the fiercest ever? Yes, I think it was. I think it was because it was so constant and so personal, and it went on for so long.
Absolutely bitter. No, they just did not get on. Very personal, very fierce. Yeah, great to watch, but ooh, dear me.
You've been going first.
Well, I think the rivalries, Kevin and mine was real. There was, you know, it wasn't made up. I mean, it was in the beginning of our rivalry together. You know, it was not very friendly, but as we got older and
in the beginning, hatred.
Exactly.
I think I'll say it. I think he will too.
Completely different characters. It's no wonder they hated each other when they were racing. You know, it was California versus Texas, it was Suzuki versus Yamaha, it was Dunlop versus Michelin. Any reason they could find to hate each other, they used it.
They had very different approach to racing. Wayne was much more considered. He would be prepared to take a second place to get the points for the championship, whereas Kevin could only see the checkered flag. It was win or bust. And it made a fantastic show, a double act, the two of them. It really was.
For me, you know, watching Wayne and his style, to me, if somebody just said, you know, give me a brief description of what it's like, he's like just unbelievably smooth off the brakes and through the center of the corner with more speed than anybody should be able to carry.
Certainly Kevin had he had a lot of confidence on the brakes, and I knew that was his strong point. And you know, I don't know if it was so much that he liked to brake really deep or that bike let him brake deep, but he always had me on the brakes. But you know, there was times that he'd pass me like that one there at Hockenheim. You know, I didn't see him doing all that, but when I went back and saw the video, I rarely saw him out of control like that on the brakes. Normally it's just like off in there and you just go, shit, I wish I could do that.
Now, and look at Kevin Schwantz, almost doesn't brake at all. Kevin Schwantz on the inside there.
You get into the corner and I'm thinking, oh man, I got it slowed down well enough. I think I'm gonna make this. And I go to get in the gas, and when I get in the gas, my bike doesn't go. And I'm thinking, what? And that's when I looked to, you watch that video, I looked to my left. Not in confidence, but because my bike wasn't, it was in first gear. I'd gone back one gear too many, and my bike was revving 14,000 RPM or 13. So I had to get second gear, and when I looked is when I shifted to second, because I was sure that he was getting ready to just go railing by the outside of me. We got off into the next corner about the same, but I just barely had enough.
I knew by then it was over. That one doesn't hurt so bad. The one at Assen's the one that hurts me a little more.
Well, and the one in Assen, you know, we started that lap like this. He was a half a second faster than the lap record that I set that nobody ever broke until they changed the track.
Oh, and Rainey's on the grass. Rainey messes it up and goes on the grass. Schwantz is with him, shoulder to shoulder. Schwantz in front. Kevin Schwantz snatched that win in the last few yards.
Yeah, I mean, that corner, that lap hurts. If there was one lap in my career I wished I could have, I mean, that one really hurts. It really, I mean, it's hard to sit here next to him and tell him that, but it does. It hurts.
It was very hard racing, but fair. They never run each other out of the track, never. It was fair racing, but very hard racing.
When I think about those races and you know, think about the intensity that we had on the track and how I needed to beat him and he needed to beat me and how we raced each other on the track, not giving an inch. You know, that's the emotion that you want when you race. You want that all the time. And now that we're talking about this, it's I can go right back to some of those you know, thoughts that I had, and I haven't had these thoughts in 22 years or 23 years. So it you know, I can still get a heart rate out of it. So it was fun.
The great rivalry between the two of them came to an end in tragic circumstances in 1993 at Misano. Rainey, by now the three-time 500cc world champion, was defending his title from Schwantz.
That day was, it's difficult to talk about, obviously, because my life changed so much after that day. In my mind, I thought if I could win the race, this would be very important to win the championship. So going into Misano, I love this racetrack, it's my favorite. Then the next race is Laguna Seca, and then it is finally in Madrid. And all 3 of these tracks, I have won, and I love these tracks. So I thought it was my advantage. So it was important to me to beat Kevin in Misano first. And but that day, it was a 30-lap race, I believe, and after 10 laps, it felt like I was exhausted. Completely different than what I have ever been before. So I think I put too much pressure on myself to make sure I pushed Kevin down. And on those bikes, I made a little mistake, and when the bike, it happened so fast that I was on the ground before I knew it. And my first thought was, oh, I've lost the world championship. And then I realized that I am going very fast, and I don't know which way is up and down, and when I finally stop, I feel this bad pain, and the pain is not natural, and there's more pain than I ever feel before, and I feel for sure maybe this is the end of my life. This is the kind of pain I was having, and I was very nervous to think like this, but yeah, it was a lot of work. I remember through that whole process, just to try to get to the next breath was much more difficult than any championship or any race that I had ever won. So I realized very, very quickly that I damaged myself very, very bad. When I said, how could something I love so much hurt so bad? It was very difficult.
When Wayne got hurt, his biggest problem when he got hurt was that he couldn't race again. And that was, I found pretty incredible, really, that he couldn't go out and race against Kevin Schwantz anymore. That was what he wanted to do, that more than anything else, more than walking. And I thought that was very, very rare type of person that would be saying the things that he was saying at that time.
To win the World Championship obviously was huge for us, for Suzuki, for myself. But to see, to have Wayne and that injury, it just kind of made racing not interesting for me anymore. I mean, I still was interested in racing, but I didn't have that. I didn't have that person to watch, to look, to push myself to try. I mean, there was still doing there. There was still some great riders out there racing, but my sparring partner wasn't there anymore. I had nothing to really kick me in the butt and motivate me.